Welcome back, everyone, to the Old Switcheroo, where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Welcome to part 2 of our Mammoth Caveman episode. We are clubbing our way through Joe and Mac 2, Lost in the Tropics, and Prehistorik Man in our epic quest to research and review every game in the Nintendo Switch online retro catalog. We are lucky enough to be joined by Ryan, aka WarBoss5, whose YouTube content you can find under the channel of the same name. He posts Twitch VODs and all kinds of fun videos. And we will now continue our discussion into prehistoric Super Nintendo games. Let's go to game number 3, which is Joe and Mac 2 Lost in the Tropics, released for the SNES in 1994. All right, let me give you the description. According to Nintendo Switch Online's catalog, it says when a caveman named Gork steals the village's precious crown, it's up to Joe and Mac to get it back. To retrieve the crown, they'll have to dash, jump, and attack over mountains, through valleys, and deep underground in order to defeat their enemies and collect 7 rainbow stones, all to regain the stolen crown. On top of all that, they can save money to remodel their houses, give flowers to their girlfriends, and even get married. And those are just some of the elephants. Some of the elements, not elephants. It's the element in the room. And those are just some of the elements that make this game great. Joe and Mac 2 Lost in the Tropics. If I can start us off, I didn't realize this game had the whole dating mini game.
Oh, it
It's
does.
amazing.
In fact,
Yeah.
there's a helpful hint from the manual because
Uh-oh.
this just mentions like, oh, you can give flowers to your girlfriends. This is a helpful hint from the manual that I wrote down because
And let's clarify what that means is that in the levels you collect gems, and then you in the overworld you can go back to your hub town, and there's a place where you can buy gifts to try and woo the cave people. Okay, Mike,
yeah.
continue.
So the helpful hints is keep giving flowers to the same girl. Eventually, she will like them.
Oh my god. Are
Oh
you
dear.
wow.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay,
yeah. So
listen.
when I
If
said
anyone's
that bit about keeping things in, about you got rid of that, but you kept some other things in. This is the other thing. That was
Yeah, but just going back to this, just the audacity of the 90s. I mean, that is, listen, if you're my student, don't tell anyone about this podcast, okay? But do not just keep giving flowers to the same girl and think that one day she'll like you. Because, man, even if that works, that's a weird way to win the game of life, if you hear what
and
I'm
the whole
saying.
that whole mechanic works. Did either of you pursue that option?
No, because the first time I gave them flowers, the first girl said she doesn't like them. And so I used the rewind feature. Okay, let's see if this girl likes my flowers. No, all 4 of them didn't like my flowers. I never went back. I was like, you know
Yeah,
what?
you're supposed to keep trying until she likes them, and then all that happens because it's this weird thing where you just have like it's like pick a curtain to give flowers to, so you can't really. I didn't see a way to know who was going to be getting flowers.
Well, wasn't it the same girl each time?
I thought it was different.
Like behind door number 1 is the girl you're trying to woo.
I thought it was random, but I may have not experimented with that heavily enough. The way that they did it with the curtains made me figure it was a random thing. Any case, at some point, they like the flowers, and you basically get like a text box of, "Hey, you're now married."
Yeah, as you do. I do wonder though, if you give flowers.
And then you can continue to give flowers, and you can furnish your hut, and then you'd eventually just go back and you have a kid.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, the messaging is pretty clear.
Child that was born while you were off adventuring.
I don't see what's suspicious about that.
You did come back to the town to give the flowers and the furniture. So
I don't know if you do. You're in a different town.
I think you just email them.
You have a starting town, but then like the central the Tiki town or whatever, Tiki Village, is
Yeah.
on a different island, and that's where you're buying all the stuff.
And Joe, but that's your family though, and you love them. There's a real like me, myself, and Irene sort of subplot happening in this game, perhaps. If either of you get my reference. Well, since we're talking so much about this game's obsession with the female form, we've got the box art here. Let's go over them. The whole dating aspect is completely absent from the box art. And I think it's one of the things that makes this game kind of unique. We're looking at the North American box here. It's appealingly cartoony. It sort of is reminiscent of the Flintstones.
Mhm.
It shows off a lot of aspects of the game. You got multiple players on the screen. You got these big bosses. Mac over there is holding one of the weapons you can find. There's the edible power-ups. You even have enemies hiding in the foreground. What is Joe holding, though, on the right side of the screen? He's got like a rock with an arrow on it, and he seems as confused as I do. What is that?
It's like an elevator button.
Was that in the game?
Button.
I don't remember ever finding that.
Also, I feel like I need to point this out. Joe and Mac, despite everything else to the contrary, do not have blue and green hair. They both have brown hair because you can see their sideburns. They're wearing hats of leaves. And that,
Oh.
Whoa. Is that no, wait, I'm going back to the other screenshots.
Those are definitely in that image, they're leaves.
Yeah, but I think he's right though. I think the sprites of those old Joe and Mac games, it does kind of look like a leaf hat versus actual hair.
Then again, I suppose I actually like this explanation better because if it isn't a hat, it means that is the color of their hair everywhere on their body.
Right.
Which,
Okay.
yeah. I think I've reached that conclusion you're at.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you implying that that's not a diaper?
No.
Wow. So the Japanese box art, it's largely the same. You get a more static image. Joe and Mac are kind of just posing while the enemies sort of surround them. But I just had to include this because of the amazing subtitle. The full game release was called Caveman Ninja 3. The protagonists are Joe and Mac again.
Don't worry, we've heard your complaints.
Right, exactly.
Not exactly. Goku is gone.
Yes. It's like, don't worry, they're in this game. I just wonder if Rookie's Adventure or Congo's Caper was seen as like, okay, it's called Caveman Ninja, but you got rid of our protagonists.
I also just enjoy that one of the dinosaurs in the back looks very similar to a dog riding in a truck.
Yeah, his like tongue is like.
And those are googly eyes, right? You attached those to the box before you took this picture, right? Because I cannot believe that's the actual artwork.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about it though, that's what the dinosaurs look like when you hit them. They get these really exaggerated, shocked faces that always made me happy. That was always satisfying. He's wailing on this really scary dinosaur, and it's like, wah! Like, I loved it.
I'll grant you that. Yeah, it is similar enough to that I suppose that fixes that looking ridiculous.
So I've got some trivia for you guys. Once again, published by Data East. It was the director was Seiichi Ishii, and he worked on a couple of noteworthy games. He made Guys, God Bless the Ring. Ryan, you were a PlayStation 1 kid for a minute, weren't you?
I remember the existence of this game. I remember that there was a period where, for whatever reason, every franchise and their brother was getting a fighting game. Like there was a Sonic the Hedgehog fighting game, there was a Star Wars fighting game, there was a
Sonic one's not terrible, actually.
It was just weird how they were weird. I think it was because that was during the fighting game boom in the arcade.
Yeah. Virtua Fighter, like
Virtual Fighter, Killer Instinct, Marvel vs. Capcom. Well, back then it was called SNK, or no, what was it? What was the original? It was X-Men versus Capcom.
Street Fighter. X-Men versus Street Fighter was the first versus fighting game.
Yeah, X-Men versus Street Fighter. All of those games were all coming out in one all at the same time.
Yeah.
So it made sense that a bunch of other random third parties would go, we have people with weapons, let's make a fighting game.
But so it's you have a very convincing fake drunk voice, or you're actually drunk and you're hiding it for the rest of the podcast.
So
Either
he
way,
has a
that was
very
good.
convincing sober voice.
Something. Urgeist, though, is it's the fighting game that has Final Fantasy characters. It has Sephiroth, it has Cloud, I believe it had Tifa Lockhart, but that is not the most infamous fighting game that this director worked on. He also made Kakuto Chojin Back Alley Brutal. Do you guys remember this game?
No.
It was really infamous because it was a early Xbox game, not Xbox 360, just full-on Xbox. It was meant to show off the superior graphics of the system, but the game's real legacy is the global controversy it sparked by using lyrics from the Quran in the background music of its central protagonist. According to Microsoft's geopolitical analyst Tom Edwards, the Japanese developers used the words due to their rhythmic quality, unaware that they had sacred meaning. And while Microsoft was aware of potential controversy, they released the game unchanged, hoping it would go unnoticed. The Saudi Arabian government made a formal protest 3 months later, and the game was pulled from store shelves worldwide, but the game wasn't selling particularly well anyway. This is all from a 2004 Guardian article written by Paul Brown.
That quoted a Microsoft geopolitical analyst. Was that the title?
Microsoft's geopolitical analyst Tom Edwards. Yes, according to a Guardian article. Yeah, very specific job title.
Yeah.
Didn't know they had those.
Yeah, well, maybe they don't anymore. But this game always just stuck out in my mind because it's like, I don't know. It's a huge collector's item now. You know, they're not going to sell it anywhere. So your chances are eBay or nothing. But I thought that was kind of an interesting little curio. Other curios here is that Congo's Caper, it featured a statue of Joe, like we had mentioned before. And Joe and Mac 2, did you guys catch this? There's a picture of Rookie in a portrait of the village elder's house.
I didn't notice that at the time, because at the time, I did not know that those were related games. I did Joe and Mac 2, and then went on to Congo's Caper, and then stumbled upon the fact that's in fact the middle game there.
Right, because in North America they removed the canonical connection. So did you remember this, or is it like, oh, that's
as soon as it came up now, it's like, oh yeah, that'd do that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And I also like this little nod. The Sega brawler Altered Beast gets a fun shout out in the game's final boss. The game's final boss says, "Welcome to your doom." Ryan, are you familiar with that meme?
I remember. I'm basically I've cottoned on to what the reference is now that you simply juxtapose the images. But I never was an Altered Beast kid.
It's a weird game, but one of its most enduring legacies is that the first boss, or actually every time you feed him, goes, "Welcome to your doom," and it was like this one of the very first spoken lines in video game history. So it sort of burned into people's brains. Gosh. So I thought that was cute that the final boss of this game is quoting that. It's a fun little shout out.
Yeah.
So Ryan was saying that Joe and Mac 2 is wildly better than Joe and Mac. So I think maybe, Ryan, you'd like to start us off. In your mind, what makes this game better?
Well, one of the first things I'll point out about this game, of all 4 games, had the best controls. I felt the most in control of my character, which was, it's 90s era video games. There's a certain amount of loss of control you kind of just have to accept, as compared to more modern games and more modern platformers, especially. But yeah. I felt that this game felt the best to play. It felt like if I screwed up, I recognize that it was me screwing up and not the game's controls deciding that, no, I'm not going to clear that jump. I will say, so on that alone, and I kind of binged all of these. I played Prehistorik Man one day, and then I binged the other 3 on a single day.
Gotcha.
So the Joe and Mac 2 was the last one I played, because I played them in the order that when you sent me the list, this was the order they were in the list. So I didn't know all of these were connected aside from the 2 Joe and Max. But yeah, so I thought that this was definitely the most comfortable to play.
And that's huge for platforming games.
Oh yeah. You have to feel confident that it's going to do what you need it to do.
Yeah. And I think the way you said, like, you screw up, but okay, that was on me. And that's why, like, to bring it back to Dark Souls and Demon Souls and those From Software games that are so difficult, it still manages to not ruin your day because it is very, very difficult, but always feels fair.
Right.
And I would say the same thing with Joe and Mac too. Mike, would you also agree this is the better game?
Nope.
Really?
Oh,
Wait, you liked? I'm not talking about the best game of this episode. I think this is clearly the best game we've talked about so far today.
No, I 100%
Huh.
would take Joe and Mac over Joe and Mac 2.
No way. Why?
We can get to. I can cover
Okay,
that
yeah.
those cons. If
All
you
right.
you cover what you like first.
Okay. Okay, man, I'm excited. We're gonna fight this one out. Well, Mike, let me tell you why you're wrong, because you did a lot to me on the Excite Bike episode. This game's boss fights are more interesting, right? You have this big Stegosaurus fight, which is very similar to the T-Rex fight from before, but now you have like these moving platforms that you have to sort of manage. So there's just that one extra layer of complexity. I think Ryan hit the nail on the head with saying the controls are so much better, but my God, this game is beautiful. It has so many big, colorful sprites and cartoonish characters. And my favorite part was the way that the game would use foreground and background. So, this screenshot I have here, you see enemies crouching in the bushes closer to the camera, and you're not on the same plane of action as them. You can't fight them, but they're lobbing arrows into your path. And that little extra foreground layer made it feel like I was, surrounded by my enemies. And it made the world feel three-dimensional, even though, obviously this is a 2D game. There's a Pteranodon boss. Either of you guys get to this one?
Yep.
No, I didn't get to this.
This one's really cool, Ryan, because you once again, you're like on top of a mountain or something, or maybe just on a cliff. But this Pteranodon boss is zooming in from the background using that cool scaling effect that only Super Nintendo at the time could do. And so it's coming closer, coming closer, coming closer. So you have to find the spot on the screen where it's not going to hit you. But then even when it misses you, the wind force of its wings sends you sliding. And that's another example of you have these two things to consider, right? It's not just dodging the boss, it's dodging the boss and then also an X factor. The Triceratops boss, yeah, I thought I had a better screenshot for this. You only see his nose, but the boss fight starts and you're just in an empty room. And it kind of hangs there for a second. You're like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, the Triceratops starts punching holes through the wall behind you until eventually it breaks through enough that you can see it. And then, to my disappointment, once it breaks through the wall, it just stands there. So it was this really cool start, very anticlimactic. But I just loved looking at this game.
Mm-hmm.
Did you not like looking at this game, Mike?
I mean, I'll grant it looks nice.
Yeah. Aesthetics aren't big for you for why you play games, though.
Not if I'm not having fun playing the game.
Oh man, I'm really shocked. Well, so I'll just wrap up what I like about it because I'm getting tired of holding back this fight. They also had some cool atmosphere effects like avalanches of snow, and then the mountable dinosaurs. Ryan, did you ever find one of these guys?
He looks happy to have you on his back. Absolutely.
But that's what's so cute about it. Yeah, it's like there's always this sort of running gag in the Flintstones about, I guess it was an animal abuse joke or maybe just not appreciating the help or whatever. But all the dinosaurs in Flintstones were just used like telephones and kitchen appliances, and they all are just sort of resigned.
It's a living.
It's a living, and that's just the vibe of the rideable dinosaurs. I thought they added nothing to the game. They were pretty underpowered. You got to hit once, they would run away.
I think I got one at one point, but I don't think.
Yeah, but it's
it
just gives you a ranged attack, which you probably already have if you get your upgraded club power up because you're already shooting projectiles. But it's just the game's cute, and unless you're dead inside like Mike, you'd appreciate something.
I did feel like I do agree with you on that. Joe and Mac really made a fantastic use of color, a fantastic use of contrasting colors, especially to draw the eye to the things you need to see. With the exception, of course, of the extremely tiny fish in the river level.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, yeah, you didn't see this guy? Well, time to take damage.
Yeah, but that seemed like a design that I think they wanted you to miss it the first time, and then you're kind of watching the water, kind of like you would do if you were actually walking through a river. You'd be a little anxious about where you're stepping. I thought that was sort of a design choice. So I don't have a lot to say that's negative about this game, Mike. So Ryan, can we let him have at it?
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to hear all this.
Yeah, what's your deal, Mike? What's wrong? Talk to us.
All right. So to start off with, I don't like the lower health compared to Joe and Mac, where Joe and Mac used half heart increments.
Okay.
So you effectively had 10. and here you're down to 5.
Okay.
You've got fewer weapons or fewer weapon options, so you're generally stuck with less range. You have like you can eat food that then you can like spit stuff for a temporary amount of time, but it doesn't feel like you've got the arsenal options that you had.
Yeah, what he's referring to is that you'll heal yourself by eating meat in this game, and if you eat meat at full health, then now you spit out bones as a projectile. And it wasn't a very good attack, but I thought that was cute.
They were really tiny, though. The seeds and the projectiles that you could spit had really tiny hitboxes. You really had to know where you were shooting within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All good.
It felt kind of pea shootery.
Yeah.
I think there's a problem with cavemen attacking because there's not a knockback, that you'll hit one that's jumping at you and you'll do damage to it, but then it will land where you are and then do damage sort of immediately. So you're in a increased vulnerability there. You have a larger vulnerability to things like eating. You'll take damage while you're eating, and it's not just you've passed over it and so you have health. Like, it's got an eating animation that takes time. So
Yeah.
you have this thing where healing makes you vulnerable to being attacked more so.
Hey, another Dark Souls connection.
Yeah. Is Joe and Mac the predecessor to the Dark Souls series? Oh, hot take. There we go. That's going to make this podcast take off.
But yeah, I think there's areas where there's stuff where it doesn't seem like they have a way to reach it, which is
So
very
it sounds
frustrating.
like you're saying the game just felt clunkier.
I would generally say, yeah. And I think, and even also simply in this, you die, the little angel comes up as like an end animation thing, but then you have to start back over. So whereas in the first one, angel comes up, I select where I would like to resume, I resume. In this one, I'm still having to start back over. So it's very much a begin again. I don't have the weapons anymore, or the weapon upgrade anymore, because that's feels finicky. And so it didn't feel like at any point what I was doing was sort of the accumulation of everything that had come before, for the most part.
Okay. You felt like you were constantly being deprived of progress and weaponry, and yeah.
Yeah, and so at a certain point, because like I did a whole lot of continues. I am showing that I have a long list of passwords written down for this. And at a certain point, I almost accepted that I wasn't going to actually get through some of the things. And then I just decided, okay, I'm just going to play through a few rounds of continues, get the coins up, except I was going to die, and then just go get more furnishings. So, like, I got a wife and kid, which some say is a victory in its own right. But that I very much hit a point where it's like, I'm not advancing any further than this. Jeremy, did you advance further than that?
Oh, Mike, you know I NintenDON'T. I beat this game.
Nice.
I almost dropped my phone. You got me on that one. I wasn't ready for that one. That's good. Yeah, I beat this game. I loved this game. I am disheartened that you had such a bad experience with it. I am curious how I would feel if I wasn't rewinding, because you're right, the weapons from Joe and Mac are kind of gone, but what you have in its place is this club that you could upgrade to the point that it's shooting shockwaves out in front of you and like damaging enemies from afar. And being a rewind abuser, I never really lost that. So I played most of this game with a projectile, and I wonder if that was a big quality of life improvement that sort of almost changed the genre. It's almost like a shooter as opposed to what you experienced.
Something I noticed about this franchise in general.
Yeah.
Projectile weapons are incredibly important.
Yep. Yeah. And because the bosses are so big, there's so many enemies on the screen at once. And that's just kind of a thing that like keeps happening in these retro games. Like, we recently did a Zelda episode with Mike's friend Riri. Riri Yells on Twitch, and those are also games where like, okay, you have a projectile attack that makes the game basically playable, and if you get hit, you lose it. So I think it's no mystery why I'm having such a better time with these games. My biggest Joy-Con was that once again I didn't know about the dating simulation thing. So like I said, I never actually wooed a woman. I never really tried, I guess, because I rewound since none of them liked my flowers. So I never even bought them, if we're going by the original MCU time travel rules. But towards the end of the game, the main villain is supposed to kidnap your family. And I never got a family, but they still showed me come home to my kidnapped family who never existed. And so Joe walks in and he goes, no one's home. And they left that. And I was like, well, yeah, no one's home. I'm a bachelor who never bought any furniture. Like, why is this so sad? So I thought that was sort of humorous and sort of symbolic in the state of, like, I don't know, the lonely man or the dawn of the incel or something.
Dawn of the incel.
I mean, what did we say? Just keep giving flowers. They'll like you eventually. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm gonna stand by it though. I think this is a legit great game. Any other praises or criticisms before we go to our final game of the day?
I don't think I have anything else on this
I'm
one.
good.
All right. Well, let's do it then. Let's wrap up our Caveman episode with Prehistorik Man. This was released on the SNES in 1996.
I will say right at the top, this game had fucking bangers.
Yeah, I like the
Music was
soundtrack.
incredible.
Let's hear what the game is described as on Nintendo Switch Online. It says, Sam, the caveman's quest to save his village begins. In this 1996 action game for the Super NES console, our hero Sam lives in a village whose food is stolen by dinosaurs. In order to get more, Sam has to collect bones, which he can then use to buy food, because the bones are their money. Okay, on his way... Anybody? I think you should leave. Ryan? Do you know that show?
I think you should. I know of it. I never watched it though.
Okay. Sam has to collect bones, which he then use to buy food. On his way, he'll need to make use of all sorts of action elements, a variety of weapons, vehicles, and attacks, including shouting to attack all on-screen foes. Can Sam reach the dinosaur graveyard and collect enough bones? Question mark, exclamation point. I don't know. What do you guys think? Can he do it? Let's look at the box art of the game, because that's people's first impression. This box art was almost really cool.
Is he on the cover twice?
Yes. Yeah. So for those who aren't watching on YouTube, the North American box art of Prehistorik Man, it has this really cool design of this primordial sunset, and all these characters are silhouettes against it. There's a silhouette of our protagonist holding his club defiantly as all of these dinosaurs and like a vulture are kind of swooping in on him, and there's trees on the side. And then, almost as if they lost confidence in their sort of artistic take, they then have like a Mike. Was Poochie the Simpsons dog that Homer voiced that was like so desperate to be cool? We have our main character wearing sneakers and a sunglasses, neither of which he ever does in the game, leaning against his cool club like a cool guy. But the character in the game, he's more like a dog person. Like, this is so obviously like 90s marketing 101 that I kind of get a smirk out of it. What do you guys think of this box?
It literally looks like someone slapped a sticker on it.
Yes.
It's badly cut out in Photoshop. You've got that little white line around the edges.
Oh my God, you're right. It does.
To their credit, this one has transparency. This isn't a black square around it.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. They went to Google Image and they searched for a transparent background. Well, the game was re-released for Game Boy Advance 7 years later, and I want to know if you guys can find my 3 major issues with this cover of the Game Boy Advance re-release. For those who can't see it, it's kind of the same concept, except, the main character only appears once, but he's standing there in the center. He's got his sunglasses. He's leaning against his club all cool. And there's 3 very weird things about this. Any idea what my beef is, you guys?
I'm going to start with the fact that he's wearing a hat that has PM on the bottom of the brim of the hat, like
That's
no one has ever done.
Yes, there's iconography on the part of the hat that no one would see if this was a real hat. You would need to be like, oh God, remember like upskirts? Remember when like that was like a thing? That could still be a thing for all I know. But like you'd have to be underneath him looking up to see that.
Yeah, I get.
I like it's quaint. You think that that's like past and is no longer a thing.
Yeah.
Don't ruin this for me, okay? That's one. That's one. What are my other 2 issues?
Well, the sunglasses almost look like swim goggles. They look.
Is it the lack of teeth? He has one giant white mouth.
No, that's not it. He's wearing a hat that has the initials PM, but his name isn't Prehistorik Man. His name is Sam. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
almost like this genre, like this fourth wall breaking moment. And then the other thing is in the very top left, the very, very top left of this box art, only for Game Boy Advance. Any idea why I dislike that?
Because it's a remake.
It's a remake.
Yeah.
Can you put that sticker on a remake?
I was gonna ask if because I think the manual that I had seemed like a European manual. Did
Yes.
the original have a US release as well? Was it a US
Yes,
release
it
or
did, but
okay?
it was developed by Titus France. We will meet them again, Mike, in our Quest for Camelot episode. That's going to be a really interesting one because it's one of the few games in the Nintendo Switch Online catalog that's based on an IP. It's a movie that Warner Brothers released, an animated movie. Titus France also worked on what the Ultra 64 podcast, which is my favorite podcast of all time. These two guys they're hilarious and they're so insightful. And they, Woody and Steve, they play through every Nintendo 64 game ever released in North America, and they rank all of them. So shout out to Ultra 64. You got to check them out, and hopefully we can get one of them on the podcast soon. They ranked this game that Titus France worked on as officially the worst N64 game of all of them. Any guesses what it is?
I don't know enough about the N64. I feel like this is trivia I should have, but I don't remember enough about
You
the
probably
N64.
knew at some point.
Probably, yeah. I'm sure
Unless
it won't
it's the
surprise me.
Superman one, I have no idea.
So we're going to come back to that, Mike. Superman will be discussed today, but it was Carmageddon 64.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Carmageddon is a sweet PC game, super disturbing, but I remember Mike and we had a lot of fun with I think the demo of this game. Do you remember that on your PC?
Yeah, I was gonna say I never had the real game, but I bought
The
the real
demo.
game on Steam like 2 years ago.
Does it hold up?
I haven't played it because it's a thing I bought on
this.
Steam. That's how Steam works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's like
just buy
80 cents,
games.
and
You
you're
never
like,
play them.
right. So Rob Stevens was the director of the Prehistorik Man game, and he himself has worked on some infamously, bizarrely bad games, including the Blues Brothers Jukebox Adventure. Mike,
God, I think
if
I've
I
seen
told you that this is what the Blues Brothers game would look like, what would you say in response to that? I've shown him a
Why is
screenshot.
there a giant mushroom in this? Like,
It's like a Mario ripoff. They
yeah.
literally put them in these enchanted lands, but instead of picking up coins, you pick up records, and instead of Mario, it's Jake or Elwood. It's pretty terrible from the videos that I've watched. And Rob Stevens also worked on Superman 64.
There you go.
Or actually, it's actually just called The Adventures of Superman. Superman 64 is actually a misnomer. But this has always been in the conversation as perhaps the worst game ever made. So port it to the Nintendo Switch Online. I think that'd be an amazing April Fool's prank. Can you guys imagine how fun that would be if they
That would be
upload
good.
those? That would be good, and it would get attention. I
Oh,
feel
yeah,
like some people would subscribe just to play this for how infamous it is. Some more trivia on Prehistorik Man as a game. Did you guys know that it was the third in a series?
What series? No, I'm curious.
The
I
Prehistoric
presume
series.
the ones before it would have been prehistoric and prehistoric.
Was that worth it? Was that worth it for you?
It was for me.
Okay, that's the important thing. Prehistoric and Prehistoric 2 were mostly known as PC releases, but they were platforming games. And as you can even see, Sam is still the main character. Look how cool these boss designs are, though. Aren't these really striking and kind of neat looking? I like them.
That one makes me feel uncomfortable, and I don't know why.
Yeah, there's a lot there. It's like this
It's
big
the,
T-Rex,
it's the
but
way his gut is thrust forward or
it's
something. I don't know.
kind of pregnant looking, and then he's got
Yeah,
these
a little
big
bit. Yeah.
And I think you attack this boss by hitting his toes. I think that's why the toes are all swollen. I would certainly hope so anyway. So this is the third game. Prehistorik Man is the third game in the Prehistoric series. And in addition to being ported onto the Game Boy Advance, it was also ported to the Nintendo DS. It was widely panned for having major slowdown, blurry visuals, and an uninspiring use of the bottom screen. You guys can see there the bottom screen of the DS was basically just used to give you a display of your health and number of lives left, and I think some kind of rudimentary radar, which actually kind of might have come in handy.
Huh.
But you could the DS had a microphone, and so you could scream at your DS to trigger Sam's super attack, which is yelling and blowing all the other enemies away. And it always cracks me up how often Nintendo does these things. I'm like, yeah, this is a portable system. We're going to include a mechanic that would make you look like a maniac if you did it on the bus. Like, Like, oh, Nintendo, your ambition is always so much greater than your practicality, and I love you for it. So I got a tickle out of that. My proudest piece, perhaps my proudest piece of trivia I have ever compiled for this podcast. Mike, you know how I discovered Mario's first speaking role was in tennis? Remember that? Deuce, right?
I mean, you contended that, yes.
I think there's an argument to be made. I think that Prehistorik Man is actually connected to the Rayman series. Will you guys look at these two images? We've got the original Rayman from the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, PC release, and then we have the sort of dragonfly slash mosquito enemy that Sam encounters. You guys see the similarity, right?
Are remarkably similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, almost to the point. It's like got the exact same sort of eye shape, the same color pattern, the same sort of, and Rayman, you can't see it, but when he's flying around, his wings is flapping just like this. So this is mosquito on the left-hand side, spelled with a K, like how Prehistorik Man uses a K instead of a C. I think this is probably due to developer Jean-Christophe Alessandri doing sprite work on both games concurrently. He was working on Prehistorik Man and Rayman at the same time. And so I think that's a fun Easter egg. And I don't think this is something anyone else on the internet has noticed. So, Prehistorik Man, prequel to Rayman, maybe? Kind of cool. What do you guys think?
I think it's neat. It's certainly, I love the syncretism.
Can you please be more blown away? That'd be helpful.
No, sorry. If I might digress for a moment. So you said to yourself, when you said, I don't think anyone has ever noticed this, my brain immediately went to, do either of you guys watch H Bomber Guy?
No.
H Bomber Guy, never even heard of it.
H Bomber Guy, he's a left tuber, YouTuber, does a lot of social justice. I'm a big lefty crazy person like that. But
more power to you.
His most recent video, well, most recent up until like 20 minutes ago when he posted a new one, was a 3-hour-long video explaining the origin. Games? Huh? It's explaining the origin of the Roblox oof. The oof. It's a very notable sound in the Roblox games. But it's
been used a lot, hasn't it?
Well, that's just it. He went back and found it, but it led him on this, because he was like, no, it's from this old game called Messiah. That's where it came from. And it was made by this guy named Tommy Tallarico. Wait, and then that's the first hour is him finding the origin, and then the next 2 is him just following this insane trail of gaming sound design history.
Wow.
And this mad person named Tommy Tallarico, who's the guy who's trying to resurrect the Intellivision. He bought Intellivision, and he's trying to resurrect their console right now, but it's failing miserably.
Oh man, I had an Intellivision. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it went down this massive rabbit hole, and all I could think to myself was, you need to go and find this guy.
Yeah,
because there's another rabbit hole here.
Yeah, I think totally.
I don't think setting up the tote board with like the red strings and everything.
I will totally always sunny the situation. So let me, if I may, kind of dive into the joy pros of this game. Because Ryan, I'm pretty sure you didn't like this game, right?
Yes,
Prehistorik Man.
I have a lot of very positive things to say about it, and I also have a lot of curse words written down in my notes.
Great. So here's what I liked about it, if I may, Mike. Is that cool with you?
Yeah.
So the Prehistorik Man game, it feels like a cartoon that's come to life, but in its own way that felt kind of distinct from Joe and Mac. I mean, obviously it's taking a lot of like the boogly eyes, and the club swinging and stuff. But the way Sam's eyes would bulge when he falls to his death, or he's flapping his arms when he's kind of going from a great height. He's not going to die in this situation, but because there's a platform below him. But they're still adding drama to the moment as he's flapping his arms as if he could, sort of slow his descent. His run animation, he like runs on all fours. And yeah, it's not very easy to control, but like it looked cool, him just sort of taking off. And he had all these fun death animations. When he would hit fire, he would all char up like ash and he would get squished like a pancake. And he had, a very sort of Tom and Jerry's sort of like scream. I thought was kind of fun. Did you guys think this game, was fun to look at?
So I loved the aesthetic of this game. I think Joe's character design is simple but fantastic. You know everything you need to know about Joe the first time you see him on screen.
Yeah.
You know, his with the hair, his eye, you know, the hair down over his eyes and the
Oh, you're talking
gigantic
about
grin.
this is Sam.
Oh, sorry, Sam. You know
Okay, I was just
everything
getting
you need
confused
to
because
know
Joe is
about
the other
Sam.
game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, he's clearly dumb as a bag of bricks, and that does not bother him. He is just a
No.
cheerful, happy-go-lucky, complete moron.
Yes. And I
And
love characters like that. It's just like
yeah,
nothing gets them down, and there's something sort of inspiring about that, I think.
and
I
the
always
and the
love a protagonist like Sam.
and the start of the game, you're introduced to all these interesting characters. They all have very interesting designs. You're introduced to a story. You know, this game had a story in a way the other three games didn't. You know, there was a clear narrative from moment one
Yeah.
about, you know, rescuing the village from starvation, you know. And I love the fact that the starvation narrative gave you a reason to collect things that were just points.
Right.
Food was just points.
And the
Diamonds,
food
just points.
the food is totally asynchronous though. It's giant Big Macs and French fries.
Oh yeah.
So
But
I love the idea that they,
Anachronistic, not asynchronous.
I got close. Okay. You could have let that one go.
I love that the chief chastises you at the end of the level if you don't collect enough.
Where is it? Where is it? Um, he
Yeah,
swears at you.
yeah,
This
exactly.
this screenshot. That's not good enough, Sam. Damn pathetic, really. You must do better. We need that food.
He
And I
just
guess
berates you, and I love that.
yeah. I thought the game was genuinely funny. There was like also, little moments. Here's that cast of characters you're talking about with like, the weaponsmith and the inventor and like your the daughter,
Yeah,
which
every character, the moment you see them, tells you so much. You know, the old man is clearly infirm, but his beard conveys wisdom. The
yeah.
hunter is clearly a hunter. You didn't even need the clear, you know, I guess he's a transplant from prehistoric Australia based on his outfit, but
I would go
Right.
prehistoric Texas.
prehistoric Texas also. Einstein, you know, the Einstein character, the blacksmith is this burly dude with a hammer. The woman
Dark
is
Souls.
clearly nothing but a, you know, an object of sexual gratification based on her design alone. I mean, come on, let's the only female member of the tribe. Full on
Well, and also,
Smurfette
I mean,
syndrome going on here.
I don't know if you guys see the screenshot of all the characters, but this is the elder describing, what everybody's gonna do, and it's like, oh, the scientist will come and he'll give you, robots, and the hunter will
Yeah.
guide you to weapons, and my daughter will come.
Yeah.
And I'm not being a creep. That's how they decided to put that line on the screen.
Oh yeah,
So,
no, we are in full 90s mode here where female game characters existed for exactly one purpose and one purpose only.
right. But I mean, even then though, like I feel like because this game is so funny in other ways, normally I would think this is like a stupid thing, but this is the level. So the levels have a variety. Like Ryan said, there is a sense of story where at the beginning, it's weird because at the beginning, dinosaurs steal all the bones from your village, which is your currency, which means now you have no money to buy food. Even though Sam is clearly capable of taking down animals on his own, you think he could just, hunt. There's even literally a hunter. Why doesn't the hunter teach you how to get your own food? Why are they having to buy food? But so then, as you go through the game, you are looking for different pickups like, oh, I need to collect a certain amount of gems to pay this toll, or I need to find a certain object. Like there's a level where you need to find a firefly to navigate this really dark level. And the cool thing about this level, I'm showing you guys on the screen, the firefly level has this little guy following you around, and it's really quite dark around everything but the glow of the firefly. And you can actually control the firefly separately from Sam by holding the look button. Do you guys ever mess with the look button?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what it is, you hold on a button, and instead of moving, Sam will put his little hands over his eyes like he's peering off to the horizon. And now you can move the camera a couple of inches off a frame.
Mhm.
And they had an interesting idea with this, and then it was executed badly because there's a lot of blind jumps that you don't really know how they're going to resolve unless you know where to use the look function. So you have to get to an edge where there was seemingly nothing but death, use the look function, and figure out where you're going to blind jump into. That could be a cool mechanic and never really paid off. But with the Firefly, the look mechanic let you control the Firefly and fly around independent. And so you would sort of scope out a path and then, meet up with it again. It was cool. It was a really cool mechanic.
You said the perfect tagline for this game. Interesting mechanics, poorly executed.
Yeah, 100%. I had some cool level designs. You're on these icebergs that are bobbing up and down, in the water, and you have this fiery volcano level, and the fire is like pulsing below you because the whole jungle is burning down, and you have to hang from these vines so the fires can't reach you. And Ryan, this screenshot I think perfectly captures, like you said, who Sam is, because he's clearly about to die and he's having the best time.
Oh yeah, no.
And
Sam has no thoughts. There's just
yeah,
fires.
yeah, and I don't know. I thought that was pretty great.
Sam was the himbo from a previous age.
Yeah, yeah. Did you guys get to the police officer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, did you find this guy? You did? He, at the end of a level, he'll be like, hey, you got to pay a toll. Go find 15 diamonds. And that's really the goal of the level, is to, it's a collectible level.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, like, you'll have this vehicle and you'll be hang gliding around having so much fun. And the cop stops you. Hey, give me money and I'm confiscating your vehicle. And then Sam just gives a thumbs up and moves on with his life. And it's like, man, really nothing phases him. I just really love his can-do spirit.
I mean, we're dealing with prehistoric capitalism. You have to have the enforcers of property law as well. It only makes sense.
But it felt like Simpsons level of humor that, like, I'm not used to seeing in games today. I think humor is hard to pull off in a video game.
When I got to that point, I didn't even notice there was a 15 diamond toll. I just got to the end and I'm like, oh, I'm done, I guess.
Yeah. And I think maybe the most underrated joke of the game is that at the end of the game, you get all your bones back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you need a cart to carry the bones back to your village because there's too many of them. You Scrooge McDucked it. You have too many riches. And so the elder guy says, a man who says he knows you sold us 2 carts for bones each. Pretty expensive. Like, you spend all the money you just got back, but it doesn't matter because with the carts, you can get even more. And so it's like, why did they include this joke line? I don't understand. It's just so weird.
So you say this happens at the end of the game. Does that mean you beat it?
Oh, I intended, Ryan. I freaking swept these caveman games, you guys. I beat all 4 of them using rewind features. And, I had a pretty good time. You guys didn't, though. You were frustrated. Talk to me.
I think for me, and that idea of interesting mechanic, bad execution, is this game felt like it had far too many mechanics, in that it didn't have we've picked some mechanics and we're going to do these well. It just kept throwing new things at me of new mechanics that didn't feel like they necessarily came back, or that they weren't present enough to really heavily utilize. So like one we haven't talked about is like there's stores that you can find.
Yeah.
That you can buy stuff at, as stores often do have, but it involved sort of too much collecting of bones for me to really take advantage of. But I like that in principle there's an idea of life insurance where you basically get a checkpoint that even after you're out of continues, you can still use.
It actually literally, the little scroll that you buy says save. You can save the game, but you got to pay for it.
You can't really save the game the way we would use save the game.
Okay.
Because if it powers off, it will not continue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. I think like the manual specifically, like, so long this will work so long as the game is still powered. Do not turn it off and expect it to still be there.
But Mom, I have to leave the game running.
Oh my gosh, do you guys remember that?
You would have to. Sam will die.
You would like go to the store and you'd like turn off the screen and hope your dad wouldn't come home and see it running with no one playing it and just switch it off. I don't know if that happened to you guys. That was a regular stress in the Strauss household. Yeah, and so you can also, between levels, or actually no, inside of levels, you'd find little warps to go to the shop that Mike's talking about. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was kind of neat because you could also learn like, oh, where is a hidden cache of, resources. Try looking underneath the bridge or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I would just rewind the game after getting the tip, and then, all right, thanks, don't need that anymore, because I never ran out of bones.
Yeah, no, I think though that does lead into, because this came up with one of those, and it was frustrating, was because one of the things is you can also get like hints for future things. And I'd gotten a hint, which was like, on the next level, if you go down at the start, you can get a weapon that you'll need for the boss, which is very helpful. And so I got the weapon, and then because I did not do great at this game, and it involved a lot of vine stuff, and tangentially, I feel that pressing down when you're on a vine should climb down, not drop.
Yes.
That aside,
I have a lot of rage for the controls, but we'll get there.
That point aside, I did not reach the end of that level on that life.
Oh, yeah.
And when I started over, the weapon that I had picked up was no longer there. And
because you collected it, but then died, lost it, and couldn't get it again.
Correct.
Oof,
and there's this weird semi-permanence that this game does of some things. Enemies come back, but the pickups don't. And it's one thing to do that for like collecting the food or something, but it's another thing when it's weapons.
I agree. Yeah, that's frustrating for sure. I thought the coolest weapon was the spears. Did you guys get this far? Where you have, I know I have a screenshot of this one. Give me a second. Yeah. The spear weapon. Did you guys ever get this?
No.
It's neat because it's a spear. It flies straight ahead. It attacks through multiple enemies. It kills them in one hit, and then it wedges into the environment. And now you have a springboard, and now you can create your own platforming tricks.
So the devs played Quack Pack.
Yeah, wow, dang, Ryan, you are the MVP of the obscured references. Yes, exactly. Although, did this come first? This might have come first.
I Quack Pack. I played a ton of Quack Pack when I was a kid. I loved that stupid game.
But, like you said, great idea, weird execution. This is the most frustrating level in the game because you have to bounce multiple times off the same spear. When you bounce on it twice, it'll fall off the tree. And then, if there's nothing below you, you're dying. But now you had to, what's that climbing technique where you're climbing a cliff and you are like putting your like pith in the wall to pull yourself higher and higher? Do you get what I'm saying? You're like jamming little metal rods into this cliff face. That's what you have to do with this spear. And it is ridiculously hard. I don't know how anyone would have done this without rewinding. So
yeah, and actually, since you bring up the jumping, one of the things I found frustrating is it introduces sort of this mechanic of like the jumping, and using enemies as well, so you can bounce really high.
Yes.
And number one, it was very finicky when I was jumping on enemies as to whether or not that was going to count as jumping on the enemy or taking damage from the enemy.
Yep.
And I feel like if you've created this to be as central a mechanic as it felt like, that should never be in question.
Yeah.
That needs to be really robust. But then the other part of that is you go so high and come back down so quickly that I couldn't tell where I was going to be landing. And frequently it's like if I land right next to an enemy that hits me from the side, that it makes the jumping feel like you're being punished for using a mechanic that they clearly want you to use.
Yeah. And also like sometimes it's hard to tell, is this part of the foreground or the background? Can I jump on this, or is it a rock in the background I'm going to fall right past?
And it's the worst when it's the shot that you showed us of the fire coming up and having to hang onto a vine to avoid it.
Yeah.
I didn't figure out that because some of the vines are just background vines.
Right. I think actually in this screenshot, I think the next one's a background vine.
Yeah.
There's actually a part in this stage, because this is the stage where I stopped playing, because this is the stage where I just lost all my remaining lives. But there is a part in this stage when if you do not hit the ground running, you will never reach the next vine before you're incinerated.
Yeah.
And nothing in the game tells you that.
Yeah, right. And I feel like sometimes the fire is timed and sometimes it's triggered by position. And I felt like it did not do that consistently, because there's bits where like, okay, I'll wait for the fire to come back, and it was like it would not. And other times it was just this inconsistency to this, and it really is, you have to know exactly where you're running to between those, because there's not much of a margin.
Yeah. It's another one of these games where it's like, the rewind feature made it a lot better for me than I think it was for you guys.
And to make matters worse, so I kind of understand, caveman hunter-gatherer society, right? They're using, everything they kill, they're using the bones for currency, they're using the meat for food. But the problem, and the thing that I think is causing Sam the most difficulty, is the fact that he's decided to butter the undersides of his feet with the fat. Because this game is so slippery.
Yeah.
Every corner, every platform is so slippery. I lost so many lives to just sliding off the edge of a platform. There is the very first, in the second level in the cave, the very first. So, okay, in the second level, you have to stand on swinging spiders, swinging platform jumping. Fine, no big deal. Sonic was doing that back at the dawn of the console generation.
Yeah.
But there were two problems with this one. Problem one, the spiders are only about as wide as Sam is, which means you have to land directly on the top of this moving object. Whereas, like in other games, the swinging platforms would be 2 to 3 times the width of the character. So you had a little bit of leeway.
Yes.
And which would be fine, except that the spider, the platform, the collision platform that the spider creates.
Yep.
During the swing, intersected with the collision platform of the ground you were leaving.
Right.
So if you were standing just on the edge of the spider, you just hit the ground and stand there, and the spider would go swinging off without you.
Or the spider would hit you.
Or the spider would hit you. Exactly.
I leveraged this the reverse way, and I stopped jumping. I would stand. Actually, that's probably a true thing about like life in general. I stopped.
It's been a while since you jumped, Mike.
I'm gonna stand here until the platform comes up underneath me.
Yep, I entirely would just let the
spiders
spiders just swing up and just be like, and now slightly tap to center myself a little bit, and that was how I dealt with those, because the platforming was difficult. So I guess I let the platforms do the samming. Is that how that works?
It was. Yeah, it was just so the controls were far too imprecise for platforming this precision.
Yep. And I think the level with the spiders is also where they decided to introduce, by the way, now we're going to hide things underground. So you're just going to have to hit the ground at the right spots and find things. And it was like,
yep. Oh, and it might be more spiders.
Well, and then, like you guys, I don't think got this far, but like eventually you start fighting, bosses that are these huge hulking sort of, I mean, they're all kind of the same long neck sort of,
That's the first boss, right?
Well, no, I think this is the third.
Yeah.
They all look very similar, which is like, a neck comprised of like kind of spherical looking sprites. So it looks like a 3D movement thing.
Spikes.
Well, so he takes different forms throughout the game. But it's basically the same dinosaur every time, with the exception of the really epic final boss, which is sort of like this weird. You see, there's another kind of variation of it, the long neck creature, but like the final boss is this really cool, like sort of Jaws fight with like this Godzilla sort of head coming up from under the ground. But the boss fights, you could beat them by landing on their head, so they can't bite you. But like certain parts of the skull you could land on, and certain parts of the skull it would hurt you. And it wouldn't necessarily be like where there's a horn. It would just be like, oh, they just didn't think to communicate this to the player. So you guys aren't wrong. This game is real sloppy, and I could see the reason that it's frustrating.
I asked which boss that is. My last note, and I think this probably marks exactly where I stopped playing this one, was no idea how I'm expected to beat first boss with what this game taught.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like you're expected to have skills that it doesn't help you acquire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
I will say I really liked the hang glider controls. Would have been nice.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Mario. Let me go to the hang glider screenshot here. Yeah, it was like, sort of the fun sort of you dive to pick up speed. It's like, Ryan, did you ever play Arkham City, Arkham Knight?
Yeah,
it was like that.
Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Yeah.
Those are fantastic games, but like it reminded me of that. Of like, okay, Batman is diving to pick up speed so then he can swoop back up. But, kind of short-lived and, felt thrilling, but also sloppy. So thrilling but sloppy. I kind of want that on my headstone. Any other thoughts on Prehistorik Man before we go to our ratings?
I think I'm good.
I liked the Banjo-Kazooie voices.
Yeah, I always like that too. Banjo-Kazooie, Animal Crossing, Prehistorik Man. They do this thing where it's like, yeah, there's not voice acting, but every letter, like on the screen, says for unlicensed flying. Each one of those letters has a sound effect. And so it sounds like a language is being spoken that you just don't understand.
Yeah,
I like
I
that
was.
too, Ryan.
There was one other thing that this did. I didn't take advantage of this, but I thought it was interesting. At least I don't think I took advantage of this. Was
We
because
already
this
talked
has
about the
an easy mode.
yeah, what does that mean?
I mean, aside from making it easier, the interesting part about it is it ends the game early. You can't
Yeah, I
beat the
heard
game on
about that.
easy mode,
Yes. Games used to do that.
but you can switch. I think you can switch the mode during play. So theoretically, you could go, okay, I've been playing on easy. I'm going to switch over to the normal mode and continue normal difficulty and continue
That's
it.
really funny. That's actually how I got the achievement for beating Halo Infinite on the toughest setting, is that I got to the last thing on easy mode, and then the final level is just it's just drive the warthog out of the exploding thing. And it's like, okay, that's not any harder. So I just switched the difficulty to the hardest part for just the driving section and got a very rare achievement.
But
You get any of your achievements, honestly.
But did Prehistoric Man have the condescending continue screens of like, are you sure you don't want to move down to easy?
Yeah, that's funny.
I mean, if it did, I would have gotten it at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, you ratings time?
I think it is.
Sure.
Okay, well, guys, it took a while, but here we are. It is time to declare each of the games we discussed today as a Nintendo or a NintenDON'T. So, as we caveman our way through all 200 plus games, let's decide if these games are worth your time. We're going to start off with the first game we discussed today, Joe and Mac. I think that Joe and Mac, it is something I don't regret playing to completion, especially due to the oddball nature of that final level with the devil inside the dino heart. Say what you will, that's a pretty memorable finale. But I can't recommend it. There are so many superior platformers available on Nintendo Switch Online that Joe and Mac, the first game, it's cute. Ultimately, it's a Nintendo. Ryan, you want to go next on this one?
So I feel like this is a good example of where can we use the word genre for prehistoric platformers?
Kind of.
I feel
There's
like
a lot of them.
I feel like this is a good example of where the genre was going to go from here.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the game just gets let down by its poor performance to the point where
Yep.
I can't say NintenDO'Nt. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Slowdown is hard to forgive on a game as simple as this.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike?
I think I'm not going to give this a Nintendo. I'm going to give this a Super Nintendo. I keep going back
What?
to this one.
Really?
Oh, what? Really?
I kept going back. Like, I was hoping I could beat this game before
In
we
one run.
recorded because I was having fun with this game and I just couldn't get that last bit. I wasn't good enough to reach all the way through the end, but I enjoyed this one.
This is officially our biggest gap in review. We've got 2 don'ts and 1 Super Nintendo. That's okay. Well, you know what? I don't want to yuck your yum anymore. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm just surprised because you clearly have frustrations with imprecise games, and I just thought this one, had a lot of hit detection problems. And
I think it also had enough that was forgiving about it. The fact that it is, it's 10 increments. So if a little bit goes badly, you have sort of the ability to recover.
yeah, there's room for error.
Yeah. And you die, you continue where you were on that level.
Well, so let's go on to Congo's Caper then. I think this game is a little too simple to get that excited about it. It does a better job of mixing up levels and enemy encounters, though. It's kind of feels more engaging at times, even though your combat options are so much more limited with just your club. But to me, it felt like the kind of perfect length for a game of this type. Kind of reminded me of Kirby's Dream Land because, right when I was about to get tired of it, I'm in the final boss fight. And at first, this was going to be a Nintendo, but its biggest weakness is that it just inevitably gets compared to the other games on this list. And I think it ultimately is forgettable compared to the wackiness and creativity on display in our next 2 titles. So, you, dear listener, whoever you are, you're probably not insane enough to play through all the Caveman games available on Nintendo Switch Online. You have to be pretty sick to do that to yourself. So, this becomes a NintenDO'Nt based solely on the fact that there are more interesting titles available at the base level Nintendo Switch Online subscription. If you can access this game, you can access games that are better. So why would you pick this one? NintenDO'N't. Ryan?
This is not just a NintenDO'N't. Not just a Super NintenDO'N't.
Ultra NintenDO'N't.
This is a NintenDO'N't 64.
Oh, we haven't even had that category yet.
Hated this game.
Whoa.
Between the terrible hitboxes on the combat, the needlessly punishing health mechanics, and the insultingly easy first boss, I never want to. It felt like the game was there as an insult to me personally.
But Ryan, it was all worth it because you just created old switcheroo lore. You have created a new category and it is absolutely gonna stick. The only problem is that there's no such thing as a Super NintenDO'N't 64, but heck yeah, dude. Okay, Mike, so it's a tie. Be the tiebreaker. Oh, wait, no, it's not. It is irrecoverably bad. But what did you think? NintenDO'N't, Mike?
I'm going NintenDO'N't. It just had so much difficulty for me. I watched a speedrunner play this. That was kind of neat.
Yeah.
But playing this was just not fun.
Okay. Wait, Ryan, what was yours? I forget. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Joe and Mac 2 Lost in the Tropics. You guys cool if we just keep taking turns on this?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so Joe and Mac 2. I think that this game made me smile from start to finish. I don't think you could say that it really innovated the 2D platformer, but in my mind, this game comes close to perfecting it. I think it's funny, it's fun, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It has cute graphics, it has these enorming bosses, really catchy music, RPG-light elements that are completely optional but just totally wacky. This one's a Super Nintendo. So we are really at peaks and valleys in this episode. Ryan, Joe and Mac 2, Nintendo or NintenDO'N't?
I would definitely go Nintendo on this one. I feel like Joe and Mac 2 is all of the potential of the first Joe and Mac,
Yes,
polished up to the point where it becomes way more playable and way more enjoyable.
Yeah. This game made me realize like why this series has a soft spot in people's hearts.
Speaking of that soft spot, once we're done here, remind me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go, Mike.
I am going NintenDO'N't.
I knew it.
Did not have fun with this one. Even I got a wife out of this game. Still underwhelmed.
It's Kat in the next room. She understands the context of what you're saying, right? Because she's going to be our guest on our next episode, and I don't want to get in trouble tangentially for this. So yeah, and so, but not a Super Nintendo.
I wouldn't go Super Nintendo. There was some bits that I liked, but just not enough, and not really within the core gameplay itself, I think.
Yeah. So, Prehistorik Man, our final game for today, it has a lot of shortcomings, right? But it stands apart in my mind, not only from the other caveman platforming games of the era, it stands apart from all other platforming games, period, I think. It misses the mark nearly as much as it hits, but my philosophy in life, because with movies, I mean, even food, honestly, give me an interesting mess over a predictable success. I think that it's so easy to imitate that even if something's not successful, I like a game that takes a chance, makes me laugh. It's a reluctant Nintendo for me, provided, so like an asterisk next to this, you're liberal with the rewind feature to compensate for some really slippery controls and frustrating level design. I think this is like the pistachio nut of games. Like there's goodness in there if you're willing to put in the work for it. But Ryan, you said this game made you want to swear at poor old Sam here. NintenDO'N't for you?
No, a Nintendo.
Oh my gosh.
I actually completely agree with your assessment. The game's a mess. The controls are terrible.
Yeah.
The directions unintelligible, fell to chaos. It has failed on just about every aspect of being a game. But I think that the story is fascinating. Just the level of effort they put into it, the character of the game, the design of the game from an artistic standpoint, and the clear ambition on display is enough that you should at least give it a try. Put it down after one time, get to the end of the continues that the game gives you, but try it at least once.
Oh, it's like you said, Sam. He's like, it's dumb as a bag of rocks, but you kind of can't help but love it.
Yeah, no, and Sam, gotta love that. God bless that little caveman himbo.
But Mike, you gonna give us a?
I'm gonna extend your pistachio analogy here. For me, this is that time where you get the pistachio where the shell is fully closed. And you're like, I grasp that there's something good here. This is not worth the time it's going to take to get to it, though. So I think
this feels like you're gearing up to a Super NintenDO'N't.
No, I'm going with the reluctant NintenDO'N't for almost the same, much of the same rationale about the game as overall. But for me, it's just a bit too much of an issue to really recommend.
It's not that you're mad, it's that you're disappointed.
Oh, brutal. Oh my gosh, guys, we freaking did it. We did all 4 Caveman games in the Nintendo Switch online catalog. If you are still listening, thank you so much for sticking with us here. Ryan, you're a force of nature. Yes.
On that note, you mentioned the 4 Caveman games. Did you know that a year ago, new Joe and Mac Caveman Ninja was released?
Yeah, it was a remake that sort of redoes the graphics in like sort of almost Disney levels of animation. And it got like no attention. But yeah, that's wild. There's been a Joe and Mac game, like a modern Joe and Mac game.
I stumbled across it because I was looking, because I swear I have a memory of seeing the original Joe and Mac being part of Nick Arcade when I was a kid.
Oh, Nick Arcade.
But I couldn't find evidence of it. But I did come across this game, and I'm like, oh, hey, it does exist. Probably with better controls.
I sometimes put Nick Arcade on because of Paramount Plus. I just kind of have it on the background. I'll keep an eye open for it. I'll let you know.
Yeah, and I will say, I think certainly for 2 of these, Joe and Mac 2 and for Congo's Caper, games done quick did speed runs of both of them. And for me, watching both was a lot more entertaining than playing them both.
I get you. Well, so Ryan, like I said, it was so much fun having you here. I really hope you come back because I think we vibed, and I freaking love all the points you made, and you invented a new category of rating for us, the NintenDO'N't 64. So you are your channel is WarBoss5 on YouTube, Twitch. Pretty much, I'm guessing you search for WarBoss5 on almost any platform, you're gonna find your stuff.
Yeah, you can find WarBoss5 on Twitter, where I go on unhinged political rants every now and then. WarBoss5 on
as you do on X.
Yep. WarBoss5 on Blue Sky, if you've got that. WarBoss5 on Mastodon, though I never touch it. WarBoss5 on Twitch. You're welcome to follow me, but I don't stream anymore. Although you can definitely check out all my old VODs. Or you can check out my old VODs as well as a couple of other random things on my YouTube channel at WarBoss5. Always happy to see you there. Who knows? I mean, I've considered getting back into the game. Who knows where that might take? So, toss a subscribe and maybe something will come down the pipe at some point.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe you'll be streaming more retro games in the future.
I do have my Ocarina of Time playthrough up on the YouTube channel.
Man, Zelda games are so rich.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be so fun getting through all those. So, everybody, you should join us next time. It's going to be a big one. We are going to be power sliding our way through the Mario Kart games. So it is going to be Super Mario Kart Super Circuit, I believe is the name, and Mario Kart 64 in our ongoing quest to rate and rank and review and research every Nintendo Switch game in the online catalog. Join us on www.theoldswitcheroo.com, where you can leave us a voicemail, get a link to our Discord, follow us on all the different social medias. We'd really genuinely love to have you. And I want to thank you all for listening. This has been the Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone. Holy heck.
That
Yeah,
was a blast. I had a
that
ton
was
of
really fun. I just don't. We can't release a 4-hour caveman game episode, can we?
It's not 4, it's like 3.
fun. 3.5, I'd say 3.5.
So you don't want to divide this up and like I could record a thing of like and this is part 1 of our caveman's. You know what I mean? Do you want to split it, or you want to just go for the 3-hour big boy and just?
You have reached the end of the first disc of this game.